Welcome to the Questionistas. I'm Chris.
I'm Spencer.
And I'm Thomas.
So quick disclaimer, this is for education and entertainment purposes. If you need help, financial advice, or anything else that's illegal for us to talk about, please see a professional. We are not experts, doctors, nor dragons, nor do we give medical advice. Take our words with a grain of salt.
You know, I really like it when Chris does the disclaimer, because it gets more interesting every time. Thomas, what's the question today?
So this is a continuation of our last episode, which was Who Am I? Part 1. So if you haven't listened to that, we recommend listening to it first. So maybe the question today is, more than just Who Am I? Part 2, is who am I really?
And we'll be able to solve that in under an hour, so stay tuned. But we ended the last episode kind of talking about a very common thing that we're hearing these days, which is a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And I took a little bit of umbrage to that. Feel free to look that up. I would probably have to as well. And I'm wondering, Thomas, if you could talk a little bit about that, because it seems to be something you and I have talked about a bit. And I wanted to give people a little primer on what the idea is of having a fixed mindset compared to having a growth mindset. And after that, we'll talk about perhaps a third option.
So a fixed versus growth mindset, that refers to the idea that your abilities are set in stone, like you're smart, you're talented, versus a growth mindset, which is the idea that you can grow and change and learn, which is, first off, a lot more in line with the science of the brain. Like, we can grow and change.
The water in our bodies keeps moving all these minerals and connecting the brain cells together differently.
Yes. So when we were talking about it in preparation for this episode, yeah, Chris took Professor Umbridge with that. Oh, wait. I don't know if I should reference J.K. Rowling's works. Anyway, yeah, tell us what you were talking about.
Canceled. Questionistas is canceled.
Questionistas is canceled. Let's see. Who else can I mention? Let's see. Orson Scott Card, Neil Gaiman.
Fill this with white noise.
Fill this with white noise.
What's the audio equivalent of a censored bar? Yes, there it is.
So we were advancing the conversation into growth versus fluid mindset when it comes to your identity. Chris.
Yeah, the problem, I don't have too much of a problem with a growth mindset, but I feel like if you have a slightly negative leaning mind, like many of us do, a growth mindset might trap us in the idea of, I'm not good enough today, and I need to continue growing to be good and worthy of love, which, by the way, Thomas, you are worthy of love. Always remember that. And so the third idea is the idea of a fluid mindset, which can change kind of every second, every day, and respond to the challenges and things that happen during our daily life. And it doesn't have to be about comparing ourselves to others or creating this idea of an ideal person that we're growing towards. You know, the seed of a tree doesn't dream of being a tree. It's a seed, and it grows, and eventually it'll be a tree. But, you know, during that time, there isn't this kind of compulsion to fill every moment of every day with some sort of self-development, self-help, or skill acquisition, which I think that many of us fall into, and it becomes kind of a numbers game.
Yeah, I'm feeling really called out right now.
Thomas, I've gathered your friends and family here, and we just have something we want to talk to you about.
Well, I mean, I think part of that, I think about becoming a writer. And one thing that not just people in general, but I mean, people in the writing community out of it will be like, so have you published anything yet?
Right.
Because that's what makes you a writer. I guess there's kind of this, and any chance I have to bash a little bit on the negative aspects of capitalism, I will. There's this: are you a productive member of society? You being a good cog in the machine, because then you're worthy. And that's the other thing I noticed about growth is it implies, like talking about trees, it implies like a hierarchy or a development or a progression from worse to better. It doesn't always have to mean that, but it brings the implication that in some way you are not enough right now.
Right.
So is the fluid then, the word that's coming to mind is adaptability.
That's a great one.
So the thing that I'm thinking of is high school, where the dynamic and the chemistry in a classroom can change hour by hour because there's different people in the room, and the kid that normally acts like a goofy clown, like, doesn't have any of his friends in the next class, and he doesn't act like a goofy clown. He acts either more subdued or more serious because he's adapting to the class. And it was in college and graduate school where the first day the professor was like, hey, no one knows who you were before this class started. You can be whatever you want. If you want to present yourself as the football quarterback, go ahead and do that. Just know there's consequences. You got to back it up. But also, if that's the personality that you want to portray, and he said, and even during the course of the semester, that first semester, we kept changing up the teams that we worked with to a point where, you're going to be with these people for the next 2 years, but be willing and be open to adapting to whatever needs to happen and taking on a different role.
Right. Because I think living at ease is being able to express whatever you're authentically feeling and thinking, and who you feel yourself you are in any given moment, instead of trying to put on some sort of mask or some sort of facade of, oh, I have to be stoic because I'm the serious one, or, oh, I have to make a joke because I'm the goofy one.
But
so you go ahead, Spencer, you go first.
Does that mean then if I see a joke opportunity, regardless of I am that kind of person, being able to express that joke or tell that joke,
right,
is okay?
It's okay for you to joke with us, Spencer. This is a safe place.
Okay, good. Whew, that's what I was asking. That was the whole thing. I don't really care about high school or anything like that.
Well, you bringing up that stuff made me think about me, and I hope I'm not spending too long on this section, but oh well, it's a good conversation. Growing up, I did that in multiple ways. So when I moved into where my mom lives right now, when my family moved into that neighborhood, I was like 10. And we were doing something with the neighbor kids, and I was like, I wonder if I can make my own nickname. Everybody call me Bob. Everybody from that neighborhood, and a lot of them, if I run into them, call me Bob.
Wow.
And then in high school, in my junior year, so not my sophomore year, my junior year, I took a theater class. And I was really, like, shy.
Oh, wow.
I know. And I performed Hakuna Matata playing both Simone and Pumbaa by myself because I was too afraid to ask anyone to do it with me.
Oh.
And I just put everything into that performance, and then people, like, I don't know if, like, I gave myself permission to be more open or whatever, but either way, after that, I became friends with tons of people in the class. We talked a lot, and it just kind of opened me up to being social. And so, and then they started calling me, long story short, another nickname is Boris. So people from high school called me Boris.
I'm going through your B names.
Right. And then, so, like, after high school, in different contexts, I would hear either Tom, Thomas, Bob, or Boris. And speaking of fluid identities, sometimes that tripped me up because I'd be like, wait a minute, they just called me Bob. Who am I?
Oh, wow.
Today. No, I mean, who am I in this context?
Right. It reminds me of a childhood story of when I was born, my grandparents forced my parents to give their kids Christian names because I grew up in like an Indian spiritual community and they wanted to give us Hindu names. And so, my legal name is Christopher, but I was raised with the name Krishna. And so, for the first 8 years of my life, everyone's calling me Krishna, and I learned how to write and how to read and how to spell my name with that. But then I moved to American public schools, and they registered me under my Christian name. And so in third grade, my mom tells the story, I came home frustrated to beyond belief because I didn't know how to spell my own name. Because I had never been told or taught how to spell Christopher. And so in school, they thought I was kind of less intelligent because I couldn't even spell my own name. But it is a fascinating kind of look at names and how ingrained those become. So when someone calls you Bob or Boris, does Bob and Boris come out, or it leads you into a place of, wait a second, what does this even mean?
That makes for an interesting maybe segue into other things of, not only can you be fluid, but can you even be fluid with your own name? Can you be fluid when someone says, we are no longer calling you by the name, and you're not even going to know how to spell the name that you're given, but we're going to give you a new name. Can you handle that situation? And as a child, I imagine that's a very difficult task to be given to any child.
Well, it's interesting because it's the question of, it brings up, does this sense of self that I feel within, is that tied to a name? Is that tied to a sequence of sounds? Or is the way I feel real before I was given a name?
What are you without a name?
Right.
Who are you without a name, I guess? It's like I said in the last episode, the best word to describe you is your name, and even that does a poor job.
Right. There's a Zen koan that asks the question, what was your name before your grandmother was born?
Well, I was named after my grandfather, so.
There you go.
So
Spencer has the response.
Spencer has the answer.
I figured it out.
Nice.
So kind of to wrap up the fluid part of this, I'm going to read this quote that Spencer posted from Bruce Lee, which is, be like water, making its way through cracks. Do not be assertive, but adjust to the object, and you shall find a way around or through it. If nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. If you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, and it becomes the bottle. You put it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Bruce Lee. I love those descriptions of like, oh, I'm a leaf on the wind, watch how I soar from Serenity. Or the way in book 5 and 6, I think, Duncan Idaho describes combat, which is like energy flowing and diverting it and moving it, which kind of has a lot to do with an episode I just recently posted, which was getting feedback from reality. Like learning to flow with reality as it is instead of just hitting your head against it and demanding it move.
Yeah.
So that is, I know we're going to get into more of how this works, but that's one of the benefits of having a fluid mindset is that you can become what the situation needs or what you need to be in that situation. You don't have to try to force an octagonal peg into a triangle hole.
So I do have a concern here, which is, for me, I call it being tofu or a chameleon. If you're adapting to a situation, and I'm thinking, the ones I'm thinking of are stories that I've heard of in abuse, where you have to adapt to that situation to a point where you're appeasing the abuser. Is that really you, or is that just,
Yeah. Okay. Tell me. Yeah, we're
survive.
talking about the dangers of some of this fluidity. Yeah. You said something about a chameleon. I'm guessing you mean like a social chameleon. What are some of these? Go into more detail about some of these concerns about this fluidity.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's when someone is being abused, they often have to adapt to the whims of an abuser, and usually, they probably excel in being liquid or fluid because the abuser can be very not sporadic, chaotic or unpredictable, and so they have to adapt, and thus they're managing someone else's emotions or someone else's power structure above them, and so telling them, "Oh, you're doing the right thing. You're truly who you are because you're being fluid right now," where they don't even have a chance to express themselves the way that they really want to be.
Right, and so I think there's a few other aspects of this, like one of which my teacher often says is don't be a doormat.
What does that mean?
Don't let people walk over you, and so this is a very important distinction. So I'm glad you brought it up, Spencer, because there's fluidity in adapting your responses to minimize disruption in a situation. And then there's the fluidity, which says anything can happen. And so I would prefer a fluidity of response compared to a fluidity which says I have to adapt to be safe in this situation. Because a fluid response to an abuse situation might be just leaving, or it might be pushing back in an exceptionally expressive manner. And so that's a very important distinction between what I would call maybe a moral fluidity or a safety-based fluidity, which diminishes the person's natural response, and what I'm suggesting is a fluidity of response where your reaction to that situation is not bounded by what you think is appropriate or would appease another person.
Well, it's like one thing that is not fluid about the people you described in an abusive situation, and I'm not trying to say that this is easy or hard or whatever. Those situations are very difficult and emotionally and mentally complicated. But when Chris mentioned leave, that is changing their identity of someone who stays with an abusive person to the identity of someone who stands up and defends themselves. So it's like it's like they were having fluid responses within a situation that they feel or could be more rigid. Does that make sense? Like they're being fluid in how they respond to the abusive person, but maybe and there could be other factors, but maybe they're not being as fluid in like being there. I don't know.
Yeah,
hope I'm not downplaying anyone's experiences. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, this one is clearly tricky. I feel like we're trying to get to a point where and I appreciate the reminder of not being a doormat, and fluidity can mean leaving the space instead of adapting to what's happening. I think there's the complexity comes with, especially with abusive situations where it's a child and a parent, and
of course,
they have no choice but to maintain themselves until they have the opportunity to leave, which may take a long time. And so
right.
just leaving isn't as simple as it sounds. But I'm about to use the word growth. I'm going to just say the question.
You can use it. Go ahead.
I don't like the word growth in this. Well, I think I don't like it for the same reason that was brought up earlier. Is there still possibility for someone to grow in a situation where there's abuse happening? They're adapting. They're fluid as all get out. They're expert fluid people.
Right. And
is there still opportunity for growth for them in that space?
Well, as long as breath courses through the body, there is chances for learning and growth and transformation. Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to first point out if you're in a safety situation, this is not the podcast that can help you in that. I mean, I have to point back at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which the bottom of the pyramid is safety and security. And I can speak for myself in my privileged position in the world that, I have the
we
freedom
assume
to
a
talk
certain
about
level
these
of
things.
Yeah, we assume a certain level of agency, freedom, opportunity, privilege. And if you're not there yet, then get help.
Yeah.
Well, and we're definitely on the opposite side of that hierarchy of needs that usually is self-actualization and trying to identify, create a sense of self, and so that's a good point to point out. But it is an interesting response to how to manage fluidity in all these spaces, and none of us are professionals in that space to help in the safety situation. But there are times where at work I'm in a meeting and I've got to figure out how to be fluid for an hour because I'm dealing with a bully. I don't have to deal with it very often, but I've got to deal with a bully. And so, it's not a safe situation at the moment. And maybe, like you said, maybe the solution is, hey, you know what? You're being way unprofessional right now. We're going to take a break and we can come back to this. And
right.
I have a very distinct memory of Chris doing that once at our when we worked together.
Oh, really?
We had we were in a meeting and a certain person in charge of a team that we collaborated with started calling everyone out very harshly and abruptly. And Chris turned around and said, "This is not the time and space for that conversation. Also, this is not a good way to have that conversation. We need to focus on why." And it was really impressive to see that. Like, I don't know what made me think of that.
I wish I remembered that, but and I think...
I'll give you more details later, just in case any of them by the tiny, tiny, tiny chance that any of them will ever even though this podcast exists.
Okay, so here's my list of 27 people that I've worked with before that I think are jerks. Number 1,
Thomas.
Oh,
Number
no!
2,
oh, crap! Oh, geez! Oh, geez! I thought this was my list for my other podcast. Sorry, guys.
Thomas. No, it's like number 1, Chris.
Yeah.
Number 2, Chris. You're just listing yourself.
That guy's the worst.
That's for our second podcast burn book.
Nice.
All right.
But this conversation, I think, leads us into kind of our next point on this, which is the idea of responding versus reacting. And I encountered this from Dr. David Hawkins, who has writings on this, but it's become kind of common in the psychology field, where when you're in a situation that's challenging, like you were describing, Spencer and Thomas, there's two ways we can act. One of which is to react. And this is an automatic response that is based on our history, based on our beliefs, and based on kind of how we usually would deal with the situation. So, Spencer, in your situation where, you're dealing with a bully at work who is, verbally abusive, the reaction probably, at least when I experienced that, would be to shut down, to kind of protect myself and to make myself smaller and to raise my walls, because that is a direct threat to my feeling of safety. And so the reaction to that is a protective reaction. And this is so deeply wired in our biology, we can't even go back to it. This is lizard brain stuff, the freeze, flee, or fight.
Fight, flight, freeze.
Right.
But I feel fun is another one that they've been identifying lately too.
Fun?
Fawn, FAWN.
Oh.
So to actually appease,
interesting.
To attempt to appease the person. Yeah.
Oh, good. I hope we can get a dozen Fs that we learn about. But the other side of this is when you can respond. And responding usually means that we have to be aware of our immediate reaction and wait it out until we have a response that comes from our own sense of self. And so that can be a completely different situation. Like when Thomas was mentioning the story about my response is, I'm in this meeting, I'm very uncomfortable because someone is speaking in a very disrespectful manner to people. And so my first reaction is to, shut down. But at some point, it feels like I need to respond from my core of honesty. And that can really change the dynamic of a situation. Even calling out, even saying something like, hey, the way you're speaking is making me feel really uncomfortable right now. Sure. That can be an honest response as opposed to the reaction of shutting down or making myself smaller.
Yeah, and I think that one fascinating thing about that is that, we still had a good working relationship with these people. After that. Not that is the metric you should use always.
Right.
If your reactions are making everybody mad at you, yeah, you should look at that. But I guess what I'm saying is, even if he didn't respond well, that is not the most important factor, whether it was a good thing. And I felt like that's what you did, is you had this honest reaction of, and one thing I've always admired about you, Chris, is you're more interested in being effective than following, and this is that fluidity again, being effective than following any sort of pre-described thing.
Right.
It's like you say,
challenges when we get into meetings, and it's like, okay, let's reinvent the playbook every time.
I loved that. And actually, Spencer's really good at this aspect too, of stepping back and saying, all right, is this really, and I remember people where we worked, Spencer, would get so frustrated with you because you'd be like, okay, so what's our high level goal here? And I just want to double check, even for 5 seconds, that this is the right direction.
Yeah.
And some people would rather just keep working than some people would rather spend 300 hours than spend 5 seconds thinking about what they should do.
Nice.
Oh, gosh. That's like me and getting published. I'd rather write a whole other novel than write a single query letter to an agent. And I literally did that a few times. I could publish this book I already have, or I could spend 1.5 years writing another one.
Hey, there we go. So Spencer, I'm interested if you don't mind going back to that situation at work, what would your honest response be if they were a cardboard cutout that couldn't actually respond to you?
We talking about my example or his example of the like going into a meeting, there's a bully?
The workspace bully, his example.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in some ways it feels like it's hard to think of what it would be because when it happened I was just like I'm out, and I
Right.
checked out and
right.
And yet there's definitely a if I'm invested and if I want to stay invested, I think similar to the, probably, I don't know. I feel like I'm just playing off of what Thomas reminded me of what I've done in the past and just saying, wait, what is the goal here? What are we trying to do here? Are we trying to, get mad at each other? Let's, when is it appropriate to have that conversation or not? Because it's definitely an interesting problem. I think sometimes the criticism that comes across too harshly, it's like, what, being able to sit down and say, what are they actually concerned about? Clearly there's a concern here. And I'm thinking of an employee that I work with, and he has been very critical of saying this is bad, this is just a bad thing, and the person that had created it is right there, and it's like, dude, you're talking about his baby over there, and it's like, well, sometimes we need to talk about this baby as being ugly, and the baby was ugly,
right?
We gotta make it like, okay, I gotta say something about the baby metaphor. It's got to be like something that they like made intentionally with their skills, like a like oh gosh. We let's say their painting is ugly. Let's go with that. Sorry, you keep bringing up the baby metaphor, and I'm like, but it's a baby.
Thomas was an ugly baby. Everyone, I'm sorry, and he still carries it.
I was a fat baby.
So adorable.
Doctor put me on a diet when I was 2.
Oh my
You gotta
Lord.
put him on skim milk because he's fat. You should see the pictures. I had rolls for days.
Nice.
Gosh.
Go ahead, finish your thought, Spencer. Then I've got something.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's how do you respond to that? And I think sometimes it's what is it that they're actually looking for, asking, or wanting,
right?
And how can we redirect their energy? I think you use that phrase, redirecting their energy, back
and moving it into a productive sphere as opposed space. To an emotional sphere,
right?
So one thing, I'm going to go meta for a second here. I know we've got actually a bunch of other notes of other ways we could take this, but I really like where the conversation is right now.
Yeah.
Focusing on this fluidity conversation.
Sure.
And I have other thoughts about protecting your identity versus being an a-hole. So I think we're good to keep going on that. And when we wrap up this topic, we'll wrap up the episode.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, Spencer, you just brought up a whole lot of new subtopics because for me, there's several perspectives. One of which is I am my work product. And this is a really dangerous thing that us creatives can get into, of identifying our own value with what we are producing. And therefore, any criticism is sort of a diminishing of your sense of self, or, multiplies those inner voices which says, I'm not good enough. And
feels like a personal attack.
Right.
Chris, you are a piece of trash because the thing you made, I have criticisms.
Right. And one of the things that I think is an underrepresented perspective is, and I'm going to go into a little bit of stereotypes here, is kind of the sales versus product mindset, where a salesperson is coming in and saying, this feature is garbage, you're garbage, I hate this. And what they're trying to share is perhaps their social shame in meeting with a customer or having a relationship with someone, and then what they're promising is not happening, or is happening in a manner which doesn't actually help the other person. And so I think having this like human lens of, you're expressing frustration, and it could be coming from a real place from yourself. I think the number of people who express frustration in a manner just to get because it brings them joy is very small. I think we just have very poor means of communicating what we're actually trying to say.
Sure. And what's funny about the sales versus product dichotomy that you're presenting, it doesn't have it's not always like this, but I've seen this where someone asks for something to be created. Mm-hmm. And you say, okay, I'm going to create this. Is that what you want? Yep, that's what I wanted. Okay, I created it. That's
talking like somebody either hiring you to do a thing, or like different department, or your boss or whatever, commissioning you to make a thing for them.
Yeah, and then you create it, and they go, "That's not what I wanted," and you're like,
"Right?
What did you really want?" And that's been a skill that I've learned. Which kind of with the bully, what is it that you're really asking here? What do you really want out of this conversation?
Right.
I don't think you want to bully us. Let me give you the benefit of the doubt. But what are you actually asking for? And this could be as much as I've got a tool at home, and one of my coworkers, I made something for him, and he's like, "That is so cool. I didn't realize you made that. I thought you just bought that." I was like, "No, I made that. It's pretty cool, right?" He's like, "Yeah, you should start selling that." And I'm like, "I don't want to make. My goal to you get that tool was not to make money, you know." And he kind of looked at me like, "Well, that's what you should do." And I'm like, "That's what I am not gonna do."
Is something worth doing if you can't turn it into a career or revenue stream
or a commodity?
Revenue stream.
And I'd like to thank today's sponsors of the Questionistas, Bubba's BBQ Shack. Aw, dang it.
I don't want to do sponsors, at least not
Fire
yet.
Our marketing department. Oh, wait, we don't have one.
Oh, yeah, that might be a good idea. Like tell more people about the podcast. We could do that.
But it reminds me of kind of a quote from the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the stories in the Hindu scriptures, which is the quote is, "Do your work, but give the fruits to me." And so what that is all we can do is put in our best effort and our best intentions in our work, but the fruit of our work, the product, is really not up to us. It's up to kind of the circumstances and all these other factors. And so I find that really helpful, when I'm getting critiqued on a creative output, which is, yes, my hands made it, but the quality of it and how it came out is up to many more things beyond kind of my own skills and my own identity.
Let me share you a cool experience, and I've tried to mimic this, and I've still failed to do it because it requires a workplace environment that's suitable for it. But had a professor. He was an artist for Disney, and he worked on video games, and he went in, started creating art. And then come Monday morning, all the artists get together, and then they say, "Here's what I made last week." And they show a weekly critique of their work, and he's watching other people, and there's like, "That's wrong, that's bad, that's ugly, that's wrong, that's," and these are Disney characters that you get to work with, but you have to put them in video game structure. And
you got to be, what is it called? On style, on sheet, whatever the phrase is.
I don't know what it is, but it's maintaining that, but then also making sure that they work for video games, because there's certain laws and rules of video games that don't work in standard structure of animation. And so you have to break certain rules. So he was really nervous, and then he got up, and the first couple weeks he felt rough, but he was seeing that the value of the critique was very dry. Like there was no, hey, you could do a little bit better this time. It's like, this is wrong, this is bad, this needs to be cut. And he took the feedback, and he realized, like, within a couple of weeks that, man, this is really valuable and very helpful for my career and for my advancement of my work. And he enjoyed it. And then, like, 6 months later, fast forward, he goes on vacation and he wakes up Monday morning in sweats, realizing, I'm not going to get my critique this morning.
Oh.
And he was devastated that he was so hungry for getting that critique. And I'm just like, how do I get to that point? How do I get to a point where the feedback that I'm getting from my colleagues is, and I want to believe is healthy, I think is the right term, to a point where, oh my gosh, we are having these critical moments and critical feedback that is helping us. I don't want to say grow again, but like I totally want to go towards grow, but helping us.
You can say grow.
Well, no, I'm trying to figure out what the right
word.
I don't know. I don't know if grow is the right word in this situation.
Stick that on the taboo list.
Minus 20 points to Gryffindor.
I'm just trying something different. But how can we use that critical feedback to be?
I got to ask one question about the feedback.
Be better. Be ourselves better. Be who we are meant to be. I don't know.
One question I got to ask real quick about the feedback. Is did the person giving feedback do anything more than giving like judgment statements? Was there like more practical or specific feedback, meaning like, this is bad because it does X, Y, and Z, or fails to do W, X, Q because your lines are not swoopy enough, or they're too rigid, or
the elbow on this character doesn't make sense, or
right.
I don't fully know. I get your
even
question.
to the point though. I'm going to add another point to it though. You could still get value from a feedback giver that's only giving you yay or nay, thumbs up or thumbs down. It's a little harder because you have to try all sorts of crazy experiments to start trying to getting more yays. It's nice to have somebody giving more specific feedback. But I think one direction I wanted to take this, I'm going to jump a little bit, is bringing us a little bit back to identity. It feels like one thing that we're saying is identity is almost like some kind of like a Venn diagram where there's all sorts of things, and we talked about this last time. Your not your identity, like your job title, your gender, your nationality, your football team, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your creations. It's like we have this shifting thing of what we include as part of I.
Right.
And that seems to have a significant impact on our reaction to criticisms of those things. So if something falls inside of that I, then and somebody else criticizes that or challenges it. Yes, or challenges like the validity of it or the worthiness of it. That seems to be a common case where we respond with, ouch.
Well, and Spencer, one of the things that was brought up when you were talking is the skill set of receiving critiques as well as digging out information from the critiquer. Because, like you're saying, oftentimes you'll get very shallow responses, and knowing what questions to ask and how to ask them to get to the actual root request or the root cause of their initial emotional feeling about it is a skill set in itself that can be studied and developed.
Yeah, I think there's the phrase value judgment,
Mm-hmm.
when critiquing, and you're saying, well, this doesn't look good because you're a bad person,
Right.
right? Like that's out of bounds most of the time, and that was, but honestly, it was hard to identify those situations when
Mm.
you're first starting out, and
Right.
you're trying to give feedback, but you don't, if you want to talk about talent, there is no one that has a good talent for giving feedback. It is learned behavior. It is something that you have to experience. No one, anyone that claims to have a talent for it or claims someone has a talent for it is in the same category as when we hate saying someone is talented, because that's fixed mindset. Because it takes a
Ooh,
lot
I
of
hate it. I hate it so much.
It takes a lot of practice, and that's ultimately
Sure.
what's most important or crucial to the to giving critique. And I did an undergrad in art, and that was what we did is giving critique, and we called it calling out your baby and calling your baby ugly. And
Yeah.
and in some ways, as much as you may not like that, Thomas, it is something that you invest not only the creation into, but also the nurturing and the growing of what it is, and it's best and it's most apt for its description of what you're trying to do, but also being able to disconnect yourself from that creation.
Yes.
That at some point,
Maybe that's a good point as well. Is like, yeah, I mean, I get frustrated when somebody criticizes my children, but I mean, I criticize and discipline and try to correct them too. And most of the time, I'm not taking that as like criticism of myself. So that almost feels like something we've been talking about in general. Is so. Now I feel bad about calling it ugly because it's a baby. Like, I don't want to call babies ugly.
Yeah.
But in a similar way, you made a thing and it either never was attached to you or just detached from you, and now it's its own thing. It's just there. Like you were saying, Chris.
Right.
Like, there's a lot more that goes into how this thing interacts with the world than just my intention while making it.
So we've covered quite a few things. We kind of started with a continuation of the last episode of a fixed versus a growth, and then we introduced a new idea of a fluid mindset. And we tried to really bring that back to earth for people, with the idea of how that understanding can be helpful and ways that it could also be unhelpful or misunderstood. And so, grounding that a bit into the work environment, where we have a lot of different interactions with people who have very different views, and some helpful ways of expressing them and some very unhelpful ways of expressing them. So I kind of want to just go around the room as if we're in a room and ask everyone to share what they kind of pulled away from this, or what they took away from this.
Is that what you do in the meeting?
That is how I end every meeting.
Is that your trick?
That's my trick. Yep.
It's not too bad of a trick. I wonder if I should try that sometime. Sometimes I feel like my meetings end without any point. It's like, okay, time's up. See ya. Get out of here.
Gotta have your way forward, like you told me about, Spencer, with Grow.
That's true.
Therefore, what?
Yeah, and I've talked about Grow. I haven't gotten you up to par on Grow, Chris, but goals, realities, options, and then a way forward.
Oh, baby, I've been using that for decades.
Oh, shoot.
I was thinking about that at the beginning of this. I was like, should we get into Grow? No, maybe not. That's another episode entirely.
I think we did talk about it in one of the episodes, but go ahead.
Well, we did, and I learned about it, but Chris was born into it. Is that what's
No.
that phrase from?
I was born in the darkness.
You merely adopted the dark. I was born to it. Where were we?
Trying to wrap this episode up.
What did the rest of it? What do we get out of this?
I think I've got a question, and I don't want to give an answer, but at the end of that meeting, whether good or bad or frustrating or unproductive or productive, how do you maintain a sense of self leaving that meeting? And we're talking in the business workplace, but that could be an interaction at the grocery store. It could be a conversation with your teenage daughter that you're just like, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do with this kid, for good or ill.
Right.
But any interaction that you have at the end of it, how do you maintain a sense of self? And I don't have the answer for that, but that's definitely a question that I kind of want to leave with at the end of this.
It's a great question.
Or even how do you not let it, like, almost how do you recover from somebody attacking or destroying something that you considered part of yourself?
Mm.
Ooh, I like that. Right, friends? Thanks for listening, and keep asking questions.